Hey friends, welcome back to Six Hearts on 6 Acres. I'm so stinking excited to be out in the garden today because it is finally planting day. Actually, yesterday is when I started getting my tomatoes and peppers out into the garden. That rooster is going to interrupt me the whole time that I'm talking. But our weather is gorgeous. We got quite a bit of rain last night and we're getting some wind and have been last night after I got those plants put in. The sun is shining. I have clouds and rain. Pretty much just intermittent all week long, and it is a perfect time to get my plants in the garden. We are at a point here in Southwest Missouri where we are past our average last frost. Hopefully, I should probably knock on some wood. Very occasionally we get one in early May, but our weather has just been incredibly beautiful and warm, and so I'm going to say that that's not happening, and I am getting the garden in. It is time. This is one of my favorite days of the year because my garden just absolutely transforms in a matter of days, and it's amazing to see, and it's amazing just to think of how these plants started out as tiny seeds in my basement and have grown into these healthy, beautiful, thriving plants that are getting windblown but are garden ready. So come with me as we plant the garden.
I started this day out with clearing the weeds out of my tomato rows. They had gotten pretty full of those early spring weeds, but it was a pretty easy job, and I made sure to collect them all and give them to my chickens. They love just scratching around in the weeds for my garden, and they end up eating most of it usually as well. If you are not new to my garden, you probably see these two beds and recognize that they are new. Even if you are new, you might notice that as well because they are bright and shiny. But Corey and I have been married for almost 16 years this July, and don't get me wrong, he is always a great help in the garden. He pretty much gets it ready for me in the spring. He built a lot of my beds. He's always helpful to get the compost ready and fill my beds and stuff like that, but he is just not interested in the growing or the gardening side of it. He is starting to actually help me preserve too, which is super nice, but this year he decided that he wanted his own two beds and he wanted to grow sorghum so we could make our own molasses. So that is what we're doing here. He got his own two beds and filled them with compost, which we found to be completely full of grubs. They are disgusting. I hate having them in beds. I'm definitely gonna spray some beneficial nematodes to hopefully help that problem out. But we did load the bed slowly and pick out every single one that we saw, which was a lot. I didn't count, but my chickens got quite the treat today. And once we got those beds filled, he just scattered in that sorghum seed and lightly covered it up. I hope that he has an amazing harvest. We have never done this before, and so we're not even expecting much at all. Honestly, I don't even know what we are gonna do, like to press it or anything like that, but he wanted to garden, so we are going with it, and we will figure it out as we go. I will be honest with you, I have never done a soil test in my garden. I have no idea what it is high or low in, but I do know that I always like to add a nitrogen source in there, and so I'm going in with blood meal and worm castings. Those are pretty much my go-tos. They seem to have worked pretty well for me in the past, so I am just going to keep that up. You see me sticking all these little white labels into the soil. This is very temporary. They are written on there with like a UV resistant marker, but I have found that it does not last the season, and by the end I'm left wondering what tomato I'm harvesting. Now if you're doing just a few different varieties. That's probably totally fine. But I have 50 different varieties of tomatoes in my garden. And so I have found that the best option is to use a label maker. And I have some zip ties that are tied up on my cattle panel. And every year I just replace the label on them. And they last all season long, all year long even. I can still perfectly read what was planted there last year. And so that is something that I just really recommend if you are somebody who loves to plant a huge variety of tomatoes. These tomatoes were all that I got in the garden that day because, as you can see, it started to rain, and so I was forced, unfortunately, to go inside. But I was so thankful for that rain. We actually got quite a bit that night, but it really watered in those tomatoes that I had just put in and the few seeds that I had put in the garden as well. Gardens just absolutely thrive with the rain. It's totally different for them than just being watered. They absolutely look lush and beautiful after a rain. We are now at the afternoon of the next day. I had plans that morning and wasn't able to work in the garden, so Avery is helping me, and we are going to get done as much as we possibly can. I am growing in Southwest Missouri, Zone 6B, or 7A, I guess, if you go by the new rezoning that happened last year. But I will tell you that I put in some 7A perennials and they did not make it through our winter. So I'm going to continue to call myself Zone 6B. But anyways, I just grow in my backyard. I plant a lot of peppers and tomatoes because they preserve really well, and I can make a lot of food to feed my family with them to avoid the grocery store as much as possible and to lower our grocery bill as much as possible.
Good morning. Today is day 3 of planting. This is the first day that I have had an actual entire day to work instead of just a couple hours. So I took my kids to school, I had my coffee, got my chickens fed, and now I am out here bright and early to get this garden planted. The goal is to plant enough tomatoes and peppers to last me an entire year. I have a decent amount of the garden planted, but I still have so much to do, so let's go ahead and get to it. We're gonna go ahead and start with peppers today. I still have a lot of tomatoes to put in, 4 rows to be exact, but I like to kind of go back and forth because I get tired of doing the same thing. So we are gonna get started on our pepper beds. Nitrogen is what helps your plants grow a really strong, healthy green system. And so I like to always amend my beds with something that is high in nitrogen. This year I am going in with some blood meal and some worm castings.
Do you see all those little green seedlings popping up right next to my arch trellis? Pretty much everything that we put in together in the last video has now germinated and is starting to come up, starting to get true leaves even on a few of them. I am so excited to see this trellis just absolutely full and beautiful. It is one of my favorite things in my garden, and it just brings me so much joy and grows so much food for our family. If you didn't get to see the video about what I am growing on the arch trellis, I'll make sure and leave it in the description box below so that you can check it out. Next to that arch trellis, I am doing an entire bed of peppers. These are just random varieties. I went in with 3 or 4 of each variety here that I was growing. I will point out what varieties they are in the garden tour next week because I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But I put in so many different kinds, and I am so excited to use my freeze dryer this summer to make all different types of pepper powders, and I also really want to learn how to ferment. That is something that's going to be completely new to me. I would like to do several different types of hot sauce and maybe even some fermented pepper pickles. So I'm really looking forward to a huge pepper harvest this year.
When you are planting tomatoes, if you have a fairly tall stem, what you want to do is pinch off all of these lower leaves and just leave the very tip, and then we're going to bury this stem as deep as we can, and we also want to make sure that none of our leaves are touching the soil. So we're going to bury it deep so that it can grow roots all up and down the stem. And we don't want the leaves touching the soil to help prevent any disease. Tomatoes get disease honestly easier than any other plant that I grow. They can be hit with blight or spot disease or all kinds of things. And so keeping them up off of the soil really helps you out there. You can see on this tomato plant all of those little white nodes right here. These are where the roots are developing, and this will continue all the way up the stem. Now, it's a misconception that these hairs are actually roots. They're not. I used to think that too, but it's actually these little white nodes, and it'll put them up the whole stem once you bury it. I laid these all out here last night. You can see all of my stems are completely bent. That is what happens when you lay them down. They are gonna bend to try and get to the sun. It's really nice to do this ahead of time, especially if you want to plant trench style, because now I can bury this whole section and the leaves that I want out of the dirt are already going straight up. This is what I mean by planting trench style. So instead of just digging one straight down deep hole, you can dig like a trench and then lay it to the side. And if you lay them down ahead of time, your plant is already going up where it needs to be. If not, these stems are pretty flexible and you can typically just bend them up on your own.
I want to take a moment to just say thank you so much to those of you who are always here and always watching my videos. I recognize your names in the comments section. I feel like we are friends, and I just have so much fun sharing with you. And I want to say, if you are new or you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I definitely don't have this all figured out, but I've been gardening for several years, and I'm just absolutely loving sharing this journey with you, sharing my family's life with you. And when you subscribe, it just really helps me out. So I appreciate it so much. When you plant peppers, you do not plant them deep like you do tomatoes. You want to keep that soil at the same level it was at while they were growing as seedlings. Peppers do not root along their stems, so there's no point in planting them deep. Now, I don't pinch anything from my pepper plants until they are quite a bit bigger, and then I will pinch off just a few of those lower leaves to keep them away from the soil. But if they're touching the soil at this point, it doesn't really bother me too much, and I haven't noticed a lot of sickness in my peppers. I grow my peppers in the Bootstrap Farmer 3.3 inch pots, and they do a great job of allowing them plenty of root growth. These were put in my basement by seed in early February, and then quickly up potted into these 3.3 inch pots where they have lived for several months now. I fertilized them along the way with some Alaskan fish fertilizer, and they are the most beautiful pepper plants that I have ever grown. I'm so excited to see what kind of harvest I get from them this year. I'm sure you can tell that the wind has really picked up at the end of this day. We actually ended up getting a just really small F1 tornado here in my town the very next day, and I was at work at the time and we had tons of hail, and so I was super worried about what was going to happen to my garden. But I'm so very thankful and blessed that we did lose one tree, but there was no damage to my garden and no damage to my property. I was just praying to God the whole time to keep my children safe and to keep my garden safe. And I'm just so thankful that it was not a total loss, all of the work that I put in this day.
Good grief, I am tired. I have been in the garden all day. I've got so much work done. I'm feeling very windblown, but also very accomplished in how much I got done. And still, there is so much to do. I still have 2 more beds that I plan to put peppers in, and then an entire row still, both sides, that I plan to put tomatoes in. That row though is looking, one, it's full of grass, and so I think I'm gonna have my husband weed eat it, and then I don't know, attempt somehow to get that grass out of there. And then I also really need to add that last bed some compost. It's a little bit low, but it is starting to rain on me, so I think I am gonna be done for the night. Right now, I just counted, I have 92 tomatoes in and I have 61 peppers in. My end goal is 90-ish peppers and probably like 120-ish tomatoes. So I still have, like I said, a ways to go, but I am just gonna go ahead and say good night here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being on this journey with me, and make sure to check in next week at the 1st of May because we are going to be going on our May garden tour, and it has changed incredibly from April. I cannot wait to show you. Until I see you next time, may God bless.